There is a whole world to be explored, fierce, frozen, and far. As we follow the winding trail and trace the banks of the frozen river, as we enter the long, unforgiving desert and climb to the peaks of the mountains, we find the stories that compel us. We love to feel lost. We love to feel far and small in a landscape, in a world, and a story that far outsizes us. So when we arrive in those moments, what is it that allows us to tell our stories effectively? Today, we'll look at what I take when I'm going the furthest and staying the longest to help me tell my stories. And perhaps that will help you decide what you need to help tell yours. All right, how's it going? So, ordinarily, I'd want to take you guys to some beautiful glaciers, some waterfalls, some sunset, whatever it may be, a cinematic journey that we can all kind of enjoy together. But right now we've got gray skies, we've got bad weather in the forecast, and quite frankly, what I want to talk about is maybe best served right here where I can lay it out in front of you. In less than 2 weeks, I am heading off for 3 weeks in Peru. This is a trip I've wanted to do for years. I put it together back in 2019. It was subsequently canceled as a result of COVID. It's far from the worst kind of loss I could have had, and so I'm perfectly happy with that. We'll call it a postponement. Now it's back, we're heading out, and the focus of the trip is 2 weeks trekking on the Waiwash Trek. This is gonna be roughly 10 to 12 days spent moving around the mountains in the Cordillera Blanca. It's an absolute dream trip. The video I'm making today is focused on, what gear would I, want to be traveling with for multiple weeks at a time, between different cities, on buses, on planes, and all kinds of different stuff. But also, what gear do I think I can bring on 2 weeks of trekking at 15,000 feet or higher? When I'm feeling sick and I've got a horrible headache and my feet are bleeding, what gear am I still going to be happy to have in my bag? To get things started, we've got item number 1, the camera. Camera of choice has to be a number of things. It has to be reliable, trustworthy, inspiring, and capable. The truth is I've used nearly a dozen cameras at this point, and half of them have broken down, frozen, whatever it may be. It's hard to trust something if it stops working when it gets cold or when it gets hot, if it can't record for long times, if the files come out corrupted. This is the only camera I've ever used where I have the ultimate trust in it. It's the best camera I can imagine. I would bring it everywhere in the world. I've already brought it to a few number of places, or a good number, and it's gonna come with me everywhere I go until it quite literally disintegrates in my hands. I'd be lying if I said that was the only camera I'm bringing. And that brings me to probably the most challenging decision of the trek. And that is whether or not to bring the beast. It's stuck in there right now. This is the DJI Mavic 3 Classic. Now, in general, I have mixed feeling about drones. I just don't always love seeing them. In fact, I always hate seeing them. But when I get home and I have this footage to look at, and I have the photos that this can create and the stories that I can build with this, it's worth 1,000 miles of walking with, 3 extra pounds, whatever it may be. It's worth every single bit of the effort. This will be coming with me. It's my second camera, and I wouldn't be surprised if I use it nearly as much as my first camera. If you're enjoying this video, please take a moment to like and subscribe. I'm building something with this channel, and your support is the best way for me to keep it moving forward. Thanks. Let's keep going. My goal is to maximize the amount of focal range I have, the quality I have, and my ability to effectively tell stories creatively while also minimizing size. And there's one piece of context that's important with all of this stuff in mind. I am doing commercial work while I'm out. So I'm gonna be getting paid for certain bits of my photo work, and that means that I cannot compromise on my ability to tell stories, to capture moments, and to compose strong commercial photography. First lens, and this is my always in my bag, never ever going to leave at home lens. The first lens is the Nikon 17 to 28 millimeter f2.8. This thing is my favorite piece of gear that isn't a camera. It's largely how I like to tell stories. It's how I see the world. It gives a dramatic perspective. It allows me to be creative. The focal length speaks for itself, as I've mentioned in my other video that I'll link somewhere around here. A wide-angle zoom lens is sort of the do-everything adventure storytelling lens, and I'll probably die by that thought. And with the megapixels this camera has, I can crop into, 35, 40, 45 millimeters without losing hardly any quality whatsoever. So, beautiful lens, beautiful setup. The size of this thing is unmatched. It's tiny for an f2.8. It just works. It gets, fits in my bag, and it takes up nearly no space. So I just love this thing. That's lens number one. My second lens of choice. This is the only other lens I'll be bringing, and it is the 70 to 180 f2.8. This lens is beautiful. For an f2.8, 70 to 200 equivalent or close to, it's very, very small. It's the smallest I've ever found. I don't believe anybody makes anything even close, and that's, I assume, because it lacks that 180 to 200 millimeter range. In my experience, that difference is very, very small. You notice it more on the wide end when you're lacking range. On the long end, the difference becomes much, much smaller. And again, to reiterate, on a high megapixel camera like the Z8, I can crop in like crazy and get all the way close to 400 millimeters and still have all the quality I believe I need to sell a photograph or print it large. I've talked about this in other videos, but I see the world in non-normal focal lengths, at least when I'm doing photography. I think those normal focal lengths, while beautiful and especially in the hands of a talented creator, they don't interest me near as much. So something longer and something wider, that's where I feel the most effective. These two lenses are small. They're relatively cheap compared to their more expensive counterparts, and they cover all of the range that I need covered. So those are the two lenses I'll be bringing, as well as on the Z8, they're both made all the more powerful. All of this should come with a disclaimer. If you guys are using gear that you like, I'm suggesting these focal ranges, especially with my style of photography in mind, but that doesn't mean you have to go out and use full frame Nikon lenses. Doesn't mean you have to use Leica, doesn't mean you have to use Canon. You can use whatever it is that you want to use. This is just the gear that suits me and my storytelling well. Accessories begin with my newest addition, and it looks like a big one. This is the Big Blue 28 watt solar charger. This is a solar panel. There's a reason it's new to my kit. These things are scary. In the past, they've been fragile. Not all of them can be in the water, and most of them couldn't charge things very well. This one suffers from none of those problems, and it weighs just barely over a pound. It packs down really small, and while I'm hiking, I can hang it over my pack, something like this. And while I'm walking, it's charging a battery bank. The battery bank it's charging is the Nightcore 20,000 milliamp energy brick. This can be soaked in the rain all night. I know that because I forgot it out in the rain all night the other day. It weighs also less than a pound. So between these two, all my energy is under 2 pounds. It can charge a phone 5 times. It can charge some, 2 camera batteries, probably multiple times. It can charge a drone battery, my GPS. This setup, these two things will be responsible for the vast majority of my energy needs. So long as I have a battery for the item I'm using, whether it's my camera or my GPS, I know that I can charge it indefinitely with this setup. This is a very new thing to my kit. It may all blow up in my face after this trek. I hope not, because that means my commercial work will have also blown up, but I'm quite excited. This works real well so far in my testing. The next piece of gear I want to talk about is a real basic one. This is a little hard shell SD card case. These photos and videos are increasingly priceless. In fact, they are my entire income now. So I need them to not die when they get wet, when they get dropped, whether they're just knocked around in the bag a little bit. SD cards aren't that strong. Even CF Express cards, being all the toughness that they are, they still break. So these things are essential. I finish a card, take it out of the camera, toss it in this where I can fit quite a few of them, and beautiful. I'm safe, my files are safe, and unless something got corrupted early in the process, they are in there. It's a great peace of mind, and it's absolutely worth it. The next item, my good old-fashioned Japanese fishing gloves. $20 US, waterproof, so far indestructible, fleece lined, crazy warm down to below freezing conditions, and best yet, they let me use my camera with complete and total comfortable dexterity. These are probably my favorite purchase of the last 10 years. The second there's a hole in one of those, I'm probably gonna buy 5 more because I will never wear another set of gloves again unless it's just so cold that I physically can't handle it. Those are freaking awesome. Headlamp, very simple, not gonna go on about it. It's a headlamp. Make sure it has red light, as I've discussed in other videos. Red light's important so that your eyes don't lose their adjustment in the dark. That just is what it is. One accessory that I've come to quite enjoy is this drone remote with the touchscreen interface. I don't know exactly what it's called, but this thing's been a bit of a game changer. For years, I had the other remote where you had to connect your phone, and ultimately that was just the most frustrating process all the time. My phone was always dead when I wanted to fly a drone. It seemed to never be working. It was flimsy. The range was awful. This thing is about as good an upgrade as it was to upgrade the drone. Can't recommend it enough. Really, really useful. One item not pictured here, because it's currently working right here, is the DJI Pocket 3, or the OP3 as people are calling it. This camera is the reason I'm doing YouTube, in all honesty. It has made the process so seamless and so easy. The audio is great. It's super, super small. The quality is absolutely phenomenal. The interface and user experience is just like as good as you can imagine. All of my videos are filmed probably at least half by this little camera, and the fact that it weighs so little, it will never not be in my bag now. If you've watched any of my other videos, then you have likely seen the majority of the footage coming through this camera. There is the tripod and the tripod head. Again, items you can't see here because they are currently where you are sitting. I have an Ulanzi travel tripod and a K&F Concepts tripod head. Both of them are dirt cheap. Neither of them are very nice. They don't do anything spectacular, but they do work and they weigh next to nothing. I don't use a tripod much, only really for time lapses, astrophotography, and now video work. And then I have the Garmin InReach Mini 2, which is my GPS device of choice. This thing is awesome for a handful of reasons, the biggest of which being that it is tiny and it's indestructible. It also clips on, which is handy, so I never have an excuse to not have it, because I just toss it on my bag and forget about it. It has an SOS function, so if I get into, quite frankly, deep shit, I can always call the nearest rescue service, and if they're available, if they're capable, they will rescue me. You should never assume without research that there's a rescue service, and you should always understand that they are not miracle workers. So if the weather is not conducive to a rescue, they won't rescue you. They'll do their best, but there are limitations. It also lets me look at maps and manage my coordinates and basic GPS functionality. It's very, very good for that. And lastly, it lets me message my family and friends. It's got an international service where I can send a message, it goes out to some satellite somewhere, ultimately ends up with my wife, my mom, my brother, whatever it may be, whoever I choose, and we can have a conversation while I'm in the most remote places you can imagine. So this thing is absolutely incredible. Last up, an item you also can't see, are the DJI wireless mics that are currently connected to me here and to you there. It's the best mic system in the world. I hate things that are in the way. I hate having to think about gear. With the wireless mic, I don't think about it. I don't notice it. It's perfect. It's just a perfect piece of gear. The honest truth is that this gear is what I like to use. It's my choice, and it's where I've invested. But you can make a setup that's very similar to this with Canon. You can make a setup that's very similar to this with Sony. This gear, though, it's, I think, the bread and butter. And I hope it comes across that there's a true intent to create effectiveness without abundance. By having this battery brick and this charger, I can carry, 3 camera batteries rather than the 10 I would need for a 2-week trek. I can charge 1 drone battery each day rather than having to bring 3. Each item is meant to be wildly effective while being wildly minimal. I swear by this kit, and honestly, it's backed by years of spending time in the mountains and the desert and by the ocean and traveling on planes and traveling on boats and spending time around animals and all these different things. There's a reason I choose this stuff, and there's a reason it's minimal, because I do know what I need to be effective. This is it. Now, I chose not to go through things like jackets, backpacking bags, safety gear outside of the GPS, tents, all that kind of stuff, because I'm a photography first channel and this is a photography first video. But if you guys are interested in me talking about the gear I functionally use to go hike long distances, I'd love to get into it. Let me know in the comments below and I will do that for you. All right, that's enough gear talk for today. What we use to make art and photography is entirely relative, and if the tools I use wouldn't work for you, that is entirely fair. Let me know if you have any questions or comments down in the comments below, and I'll see you guys next week. Have a good one. Bye-bye.